Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. This is your host, Steve Ramona, and we've got part two of a really good friend of mine who's been through a lot in his life. I just learned in the green room. But you know, the nice thing about obstacles, and that's hard to say because the obstacles aren't nice, is what you learn from them. He's learned from them to be super successful and still growing and helping others and serving others. Joey, welcome to part two.
Oh, it's great to be here with you, Steve. Any conversation with you is always a pleasure.
Oh, this is going to be great. You have a lot of energy. You've been told that. I've told you that. What is the driver for this positive energy?
You know what I think it is really is I think I've known the opposite and I've lived the opposite. I've lived in lack and I've lived in feeling like I'm not enough, and I've lived in fake happiness and things like that. And today I get to live how I get to live. I get to live with happiness. I get to live with joy. I get to live knowing that my life matters in other people's lives, and then I'm having an impact with what I'm doing. And yeah, I believe that's what it is.
And can you help others more with the experiences you've been through?
Oh yeah. Like everything I do today, Steve, honestly, I feel like I was the guinea pig. I mean, we all go through a lot. It's part of the human condition. And I understand that, and I'm no worse or anybody else and stuff, but life's lessons, is a book I wrote, but life's lessons is all about, instead of having the judgment on things happening, as I started looking at things going, okay, if I really want to believe, if there's an ounce of me that wants to believe that life happens for me and not to me, then why are these things happening? And when I took judgment off of the things that were happening and deeming them as good or bad, right or wrong, fair or unfair, and I just started looking at the facts of what was happening, it was leading me someplace. And as I started understanding those life's lessons, as I started learning from what was happening, is when I really could start growing beyond those things to the life I get to live today.
Tell us one of these stories that they're tough stories. They're could have been tragic. Pick one or two that you want to tell that to give the audience some idea what you've been through.
Yeah, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. There were five of us kids, and my mom and dad, and they stayed married till death do them part and everything else. But my entire youth was riddled with my parents working exhaustively and trying to make ends meet and keep a roof over our head and do all those things. And they did a great job. They were great people, but that lack was just so ingrained in me. I remember at 9 years old going to a friend of mine's house and spending the night, and his dad gave us $20, and he goes, "Go up to Dairy Queen, and take your bikes and go up there." And in my family, we had to save up to do something like that. So I spent the weekend over there and had a great time. And I went back home, and it was, I remember, like, I was like 9 and a half years old, and I remember noticing the energy difference between the two places. And in my head, I said, "Man, you people," meaning my parents, "you're not living right, and I'm not going to live like you guys." And then I found myself in my 20s living that exact same pathway, to the point, Steve, where if something showed up easy for me, I thought I didn't deserve it or I didn't earn it. And so I would start businesses. I got started in corporate America because I was taught that a man gets a job and supports a family and hopefully lives long enough to enjoy it. So I started that pathway and stuff into that. And I, no matter what I did, I just couldn't get ahead. No matter what I was doing, I was doing programs. I was doing things like The Secret. I was applying everything I could learn. At 22 years old, I became a student of what I do today. And I really, really leaned into it with all my heart. And I never didn't seem to ever get the results I wanted. I was the most positive person that I knew, but I wasn't getting any results, and it was fake. It wasn't authentic. And I thought if I acted it long enough, it would come true, but it didn't. It didn't until years later, like decades later. So that was probably my starting point. And then from there, it just kept growing. I mean, I was sharing with you earlier, in my 20s, we had five babies, five pregnancies rather. And the first two were born at like 24 or 25 weeks, and they'd be on equipment for hours and then pass away. And then my son was born. And then we experienced the two more pregnancies like the first two. And I was just broken. And honestly, at that point, I walked away from God. And in doing so, I went into my 30s running my life on self-will, completely self-will, on doing what I thought was best, on going up here into my mind and strategizing and coming up with the plans and how I was going to do it. And I was working exhaustively and doing all the stuff that I work against today, but
Yeah.
massive actions and everything. And it led to me abusing alcohol. It led to me doing things like overeating. It led to doing things like gambling and such. And to the point I got so deep and pulled into that alcohol that I had to reach out and ask for help. I could not get out of it myself. And man, I'm telling you, if you've ever experienced something like that in your life, that's a scary place to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
So your village or community, I like to call it village, was a big part of your life, and how?
Oh yeah, because later on I realized that abuse of that alcohol was necessary for me to get to a point of pain of asking for help and not going it alone, to open up avenues for me to become who I am today. Without those things, I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation today. So, and honestly, everything that's happened in my past is truly not that it's been a gift, but it's carried a gift within the struggle that has helped me to grow and to expand, which also helps me to have an impact at 22 years old. I felt that the purpose of my life was to inspire, motivate, and lead millions of people to live better lives. But I was living in struggle and lack, and I didn't know how to do that even myself, let alone help anybody else. So I became a student of it, and it took literally decades for me to get to the point of where I'm at today. But I'll tell you, even in saying that, it has been such a miracle ride this lifetime.
Yeah, and you can serve people better and help people more because you can shorten that time frame. It's not going to be decades when you talk, work with people and talk to
No, what
people.
took me decades to learn, people learn in weeks now because of exactly what you said. And I don't ever look back at those things and go, oh, wasn't it shorter for me, or why it was the gift, the blessing that came from it was so huge. It's almost like I'm grateful for that struggle that was there.
When was the turning point where you became a true servant?
I, I'd like to say I've always, but that I didn't act that way. I didn't walk that walk authentically. I believe in my heart I've always been, but my actions didn't reflect that. My actions were me, me, me. How am I going to do better? How am I going to get more? And I think it's really it's a combination. I think the alcohol and stepping out of that. But then there was another instance after that where I was riding motorcycles with a friend of mine. And we went all through Colorado, going to Utah, and we rode too late one night. And I knew we were late, but I kept having this driving force that was, I call it my intuition. And for me, I've learned that my intuition comes almost like a feeling with an action tied to it. And so we're riding and we're out later than we should have been. I had 5 different signs where my intuition, I could just hear it going, stop, pull over, stop, pull over. And I was bent on making it to Moab that night. And so I just kept pushing and pushing. And at one point, I had things happen like we're riding, I'm doing 70 miles an hour. It's already starting, the sun's starting to set and stuff. And I got the cruise set at 70 miles an hour, no helmet on, thin jacket, thin jeans, and just cooking along with the radio blaring. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a bird comes down, hits my windshield, and pops up in the air. And I heard it like, stop. Like I heard this direction, stop. And I was like, ah, and I kept going. Not even a half hour later, something runs out of the road. It was probably about the size of a decent sized raccoon, hits my back tire and bounces off, and I hear it again. There's other instances, I won't go into all of them, but the last one is we're passing by a sign that says last bed and breakfast till Moab. And it was like I could hear it over and over going, just stop, pull over, stop, pull over. And I literally said out loud, no, I'm getting to Moab. Within 15 minutes of there, cruise control at 70 miles an hour. I'm holding the handlebars with my left hand because I have to go like this because the sun's at the point where it's starting to drop and it's right in my eyes. So I'm kind of visoring myself. And as it's happening, a deer jumps out into the road. If he'd have jumped out and stayed there, I'd have just went by him. But he literally lunged into the left-hand side of me, put me over into a ditch. Me and the bike slid through the ditch, across the gravel road, back into a ditch about 2.5 foot from a wood fence post with razor blade wires where I stopped.
Oh,
I was unconscious. I wake, like I come to, but I saw the whole thing. It was like almost like slow motion going through and seeing the blades of grass coming across my face and things like that and everything. There's no feeling. It was just seeing it almost like a movie, you know, with and I come to the guy I was with, who's this big brawly guy, you know, and he's looking over me and he's crying. He thought I was dead.
oh,
The bike is just completely ripped apart, everything on it and stuff. When I go to get up, the only injuries I sustained was a broken leg. I tore my bicep muscle off, and they had to reconstruct my shoulder because he came in this side. The only house in the whole area was across the street, and it was the township EMS, and he had the ambulance at home. If you'd have went 50, not even 50 yards either way from where I went down, instead of it being a shallow ditch, it was those really deep ones with the huge boulders in it. I made it to Moab that night in the back of an ambulance.
Yeah. The
And on the
lesson,
way there,
go ahead.
go on.
I can say a
On
lesson
the way,
learned, listen to your inside voice.
on the way there, I just had this conversation happen within me without me saying a word. But I could hear, I knew it was like with my creator, with who I call God. And it was like I just made this solemn promise. I will listen to my intuition for the rest of my life. And it's funny because that was years ago. And since then, anytime that intuition sparks, I still get that head thought of what I want. But that accident comes back in vivid detail to me
Oh
to
my God.
remind me.
Yeah. And so the audience can take your memory and stick it like it's going to be in my head, not having to go through a motorcycle accident, just learning from your story to listen to inner voice, listen to intuition, and trust it. I guess that's the key too, huh?
Isn't that where the great wisdom of our life comes in, when we can learn from other people's lessons and we don't have to experience it ourselves?
Well, that's the power of being human.
It is.
And
it's the
open.
power of people, honestly, like you're somebody I so much look up to, Steve, because that servant's heart that you talk and you wear and you live through so often is exactly doing that, right? It's helping other people to not have to go through those lessons, not have to go through those pain points, but still get the lesson out of it to grow and expand. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited about what I get to do today.
Yeah, that's powerful. And here's the great thing. The kingdom upstairs, he wanted you to stay alive because you said 50 yards either way, coincidence, whatever you want to call it. I call it, and we talk about that, you know, God and the kingdom said, Joey, you got stuff to do in this world. And that's where you want to really take advantage of it.
And that really sparked a match for me with my life too, because after that, you know, I mean, I thought it was horrendous. I'd never experienced something like that, like an accident like that of me. You know, you hear about motorcycles, but you never think it's you, and no helmet or anything, and no head injuries out of it. And then I get back, you know, I was living in Iowa at the time, and I get back and I have the surgery and my arms all up and my legs in the cast and everything. And I get a phone call, and it's a guy from the Harley Davidson that they sent my motorcycle to in Salt Lake City. And he goes, I own the shop and everything. He goes, and I just want to clarify, I have a motorcycle in here. It's da da da. I said, yeah, that's my bike. And he goes, I go, is it fixable? And he goes, no. He goes, I was calling you because I wanted to confirm, were you the one riding this bike? Yeah, I said I was. And he said, I've never, ever seen a motorcycle in this condition that I've been able to talk to the operator.
Oh my God.
So
Well, there you go. That's the true keeping you around, not a coincidence.
Yeah.
When it comes to
And at
people,
that point,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say at that point, after that happened, even more so is I started what you call the servant's heart. I started putting aside what my desires, what I thought my needs were, what my wants were, what about mine, and all of that, and started looking into, man, if I'm here to serve, show me how, show me where, show me with who. And honestly, the greatest fulfillment of my life today comes from that.
Yeah. And that's powerful. It took a major accident to have all this transpire. And that's how the world is if you let it happen that way. You've done, you had these obstacles, you've recovered from them, especially this motorcycle accident. What's one of your biggest disappointments so far?
I would typically say that I didn't learn sooner so I could have a bigger impact with my life. But even that's being worked out. I'm starting an area where I can certify other people doing what I do and stuff like that. So I'll expand the footprint that way. So the impact this man here is supposed to have with his life is going to happen regardless of me. So I don't know if there's this. I guess the one thing I would say is I talked about the pregnancies in my son, and I absolutely adore my son. On his first birthday, I didn't get to be home celebrating that day with him because I was out building a sales territory because I thought that's what a man was supposed to do. And to this day, I have a very close relationship with my son, and I love and adore him, but I can never go back and celebrate that day with him. I've lost that forever. And I think that's one of the things when people talk to me about like my energy and my passion towards what I do. I think that's part of it is I know I carry that every day with me of what I missed because of my conditioning and my programming and my beliefs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so anybody I can help not to miss that, I would love to. Anybody I can help. My parents, they didn't have tools like they have today available to help them, and they were really good people, but they lived that life of struggle because they thought they were supposed to. And whenever I can help somebody bypass or sidestep or get around that or get through that, uh,
What
that's
would you
such
tell
a
you,
blessing in my life.
what you know right now today in your 25 years you've lived on this earth? Just kidding. I know you're a little bit older, but you look younger. What would you tell your parents what you've learned up to this point? What would you go back and tell your parents if you could at 15 years old or 10 years old
I,
when
I
you
would
were?
I would thank them. I would, both my parents are passed, so I
Wow.
have this. What you're saying, what would I have this happen somewhat regularly? I have a lot of blessings in my life between like getting conversations like this or doing the things I do and such, and I would thank them because doing their best helped me live in so much struggle that I was willing to do something different rather than live in that struggle the rest of my life, which has now expanded out.
Yeah. And that's such a great point. What would you tell parents now who have these young children, 5, 6, 7, 10, that might be in the same position as your parents? What could you tell them to help them right now?
I would lean into them and say, struggle is a conditioned belief. It's something conditioned. It's not a natural belief. So if we're living in struggle, it's not natural. It's not authentic place for us to live. That we're supposed to be living in what I call happy, joyous, and free. We're supposed to be living excited about this life, excited about what's happening, excited about miracles showing up in our life on a regular basis. We're supposed to be living that way. And if you're not, understand it's not that you're broken, because that's what I used to think. I used to think I wasn't deserving, or I used to think I wasn't one of the select people that were, like deemed to have a good life, that I was going to struggle. It's not that at all. That's all BS and horse malarkey. You're important in this world. Your life is important in this time right here, being here. There's a purpose to it. If you start looking for that and what that is and start unfolding that, the struggle will be lifted from you. We don't even have to. This is what's so amazing. Steve, I found that we don't have to lift that struggle. We don't have to unburden ourselves from it. All we got to do is look into why we're here, what we're here for, and what the impact, that, and as we lean into that, that struggle is lifted from us. We don't even have to effort it.
Yeah. And that's a powerful emotion when we take that negative emotion away. It just was that phrase, weight lifted off my shoulders. That's what you're saying,
Yeah.
right?
It is exactly. It's exactly that. Yeah. 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 The other thing I just want to bring up, because it's kind of newer, but it's been about a month ago, and you and I talked about it, but I just want to bring this into it. The other thing that I have found, if I'm looking at the key indicators of what have really, really blessed my life to be who I am today, one of the other ones I'll say is I I gave up the struggle in trying to say I found a God, a higher power, something bigger than me existing in this world. And I opened up the avenue to be a continuous seeker. And what happens with that is, if we lose our car keys, when we find them, we quit looking for our car keys, right? We quit trying to find out where they are. I have found the same thing with that mighty force in my life. When if I feel like I found it, I quit looking. And when I quit looking, I stunt my growth, I stunt my capabilities, I stunt my potentials and opportunities, I stunt all of it. But if I stay in that seeking mode, if I stay in that mode where I know, I call it God, I know who God was yesterday. I don't know who he is and how he's going to show up today. But if I'm seeking that, I get to see that and continue to grow and expand. And all of a sudden, I was telling you, my business starts growing almost out of the blue. It's like coincidences happen more regularly to bring about things in my life that I consider to be blessings.
Yeah. It's seeking is, and that's God, business. Seeking is action, not talking all the time about it, but taking it, seeking it, not just reading your Bible or saying, hey, I'm going to do this dream job. Go get it, is what you're saying.
And it's also not the other side. It's not the exhaustive efforts into trying to identify it and doing all that, because I've done that too. I've gone to it, like that side, that extreme, and that didn't bring results either. It's really about that balance where I stay open to seeking, but I'm leaning into what feels good. So I was telling you before this is I've been playing 12 to 15 hours a week in pickleball. I love it. I love playing. I love learning. I love getting better at it. I love the camaraderie and the community and everything else with it and such. And as I've been doing this, my business has grown almost unrealistically over the last month and a half that I've been playing pickleball like that. And I believe the reason being is I get the heck out of my own way, because I'm the only person who can block me. I'm the only person who can block for a while, Steve, it's funny, we're going down this avenue and I didn't intend to, but for a while I was praying, please take away my free will. I don't want to have it, because that's what messes everything up. If I didn't have free will, I'd have to follow the pathway and then it would be perfect, right? But it's understanding how to align. And that's what I love about what I'm experiencing right now is I'm aligning my self-will with the seeking. And in doing so, I've experienced that it opens up avenues that I would not have been able to open through my logical mind.
Are you happy?
Oh my God, extremely.
And that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
If you're doing something you're unhappy with, whatever, business, personal, don't do it. I know it's not easy, not easy to do, but it's a great lesson you just put out there.
Yeah, I used to shed tears over the pain of the life I was living, and it might not be an accident, a motorcycle accident. It might not be at a time something like that's happening, but just how hard it was, and how much struggle and how much effort I put into it, and the minimal results that came. It would. Today, I find that I'm driving and I'll get a message from somebody I'm working with, or I'll get something will happen, and again I have tears, but they're like, I feel so blessed.
Blessed is good, and and tears are good. There's tears of joy,
Yeah.
there's tears of sadness. What would, if I reached out to one of your friends that knows you very well, what would they tell me?
I think the first thing they would say is I am who I am. I'm authentic to who I am. Um, most like people call me positive, things like that. They talk about my energy and stuff like that. But I think that's the one is I am who I am. This is
That's
me.
that's so great, because here's the thing: self-awareness is important. I talked to a lady that wrote a book about called Brag. There's a proper way to brag, and there's an improper way to brag. And I love that question, because it makes you self-aware, but also self-reflective of how you are and how you're portraying yourself out there, which is very important, which is what comes to the servant heart, right? The more you serve, that's if you're authentic about the serving, that's the key.
No, and you're absolutely right. And part of the thing is like today I feel pride about who I am. Today I'm proud of my part in the successes I've experienced. And that's part of the thing with the servant's heart too. Because if I can't recognize that inside of me, how am I going to help anybody else to do that?
Yeah.
So it's really owning that part of ourselves that's like, man, regardless of what we've been through or what life's looked like, but where we are right now, like we've had a part in that and maybe it's just allowing, maybe it's getting into alignment, things like that. But we have a part. There's self-worth and goodness in who we are right now. And part of the thing I had to get away from is because I grew up hearing things like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Which means the problem areas get our attention and we fix them. And so long I went from problem to problem, from problem to problem, trying to fix everything. And I thought at some point I get everything fixed and my life will be good. That never happens. I have problems today. What I've learned to do is the squeaky wheels of my life today are my blessings, my gratitudes. That's what I put my attention to. And if something pops up and it needs fixing or something like that, then I do that. But it doesn't become this exhaustive thing, that place I go and live in and put on as who I am and beat my self-worth and everything else. So it's a problem. It's a speed bump. It's a hiccup.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so powerful. Well, we're running to the end of our show. It's been a great show. I've learned a lot about you. I've learned a lot about serving and sharing and helping and being authentic. And I want to thank you for being on the show.
Oh, I'm so grateful to get to be here with you, Stephen, and talking to you. It's a blessing. It's a gift. I love it. I thought we were going to go for 3.5 hours, though. No,
Not today, but I think we're going to have to next time.
I'm just kidding you, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you for listening and watching this podcast with Joey Troshagen. You're going to learn about how he impacted people. He lived with happiness. Some of those incredible stories, especially the motorcycle accident he had, and how he learned from that, how your mindset and using your mind is so important for your life. And of course, his incredible stories that he's told. Joey's really opened his heart to us on this show, and we really appreciate that. I hope you learned something, and I hope I see you at the next show. Thank you.